Hey guys, Zane here with another one take review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Liam Gallagher album, Come On You Know. Come On You Know is the latest solo studio album from ex-Oasis vocalist as well as world-renowned brother hater Liam Gallagher. After making a relatively decent solo debut with 2017's As You Were, the younger of the Gallagher brothers has repeatedly tried and failed to live up to the inevitable hype that comes with any potential release with his famous name attached to it. Unfortunately, Come On You Know feels less like another album from a legendary hitmaker like Liam Gallagher, and more like another record from an artist whose relevance and popularity within the music industry is continuing to wane as he is contractually obligated to release another solo album. For example, Gallagher's vocal work here is painfully mediocre, and it just goes to show that his glory days as a performer are far, far behind him. The effects and polish that are often layered over his vocal lines just act as a further dried out cherry on top of an already inauthentic vocal performance. There doesn't seem to be an ounce of care or passion in Liam Gallagher's voice on this record, and even with that being said, he continues to try to reach the same tones and levels of excitement that he delivered when Oasis were at their best with their first two albums. It seems that rather than walk the path of someone like, say, Jonathan Richman of the Modern Lovers, Liam Gallagher refuses to go into the territory of new sounds to accommodate for a increasingly weaker set of lungs. Although this is certainly the man that once fronted one of England's best rock bands of the 90s, definitely maybe this is not, and if I'm being honest, this isn't even Be Here Now in terms of quality. And trust me, it does not take a lot to be better than Be Here Now in terms of quality at all, if I'm being totally honest. Liam sounds very disengaged throughout Come On You Know, and even sounds disillusioned with his own sound that he keeps presenting to his audience. Liam's third solo album could have been a golden opportunity to, at the very least, dip his toes into new waters that would send him in a different but still fresh and interesting direction, but really, Come On You Know feels like anything but a passion project. Again, this album feels more like a record made out of obligation and not love or passion for music. The instrumentals found here can be easily compared to all sorts of instrumentals from previous projects, previous records of his, just with a lesser sense of immediacy and impact to them, and Gallagher himself can barely bring himself to seem even remotely interested in what he even has to say on this record. Come On You Know's only major highlight is the mildly psychedelic and heavily dark cabaret-influenced Moscow Rules, which sees Gallagher actually do something slightly different compared to what he's done in the past in his solo career at least, and makes for a very interesting and frankly amazing song that's perhaps the best song that he's done in the entirety of his three solo albums thus far, and Moscow Rules is really what the entirety of this album should have been. Something new and interesting and not just a pointless rehash of old sounds that nobody really wants to hear in the current year. As far as lyrical work goes, Liam is perfectly fine here, even though he isn't great either. He certainly doesn't reach the charming heights of that of his previous work, but then again, I don't think that should really be expected anymore, as frankly, it's been decades since he's been involved with anything that was genuinely impressive lyrically. I mean, you could even argue that the two best Oasis albums, Definitely Maybe and What's the Story Morning Glory, aren't written beautifully either. I mean, sure, there are songs like Don't Look Back in Anger or Live Forever, but at the same time, you've also got songs that are totally mindless, like Supersonic or even Wonderwall to some extent, so take it for what you will, but Liam Gallagher certainly isn't at his best on his latest album, is my point. As it stands, Come On You Know doesn't really do much to differ itself from the previous hopeful positivity and glass half full philosophy that Gallagher has tackled in his previous work. While the songwriting here is definitely still an example of everybody's favorite, or most people's favorite, Gallagher brother really begging a larger audience to once again care about him by circling around to older and more beloved ideas, the lyrical aspect of this album really isn't all that bad and doesn't do much good or weak to the overall reception that this record gets me, and I just don't think that the lyricism here is much to talk about, but at the same time, it's certainly not as bad as it could be either. The instrumentals, on the other hand, are quite dull and often don't even fit the intended tone of the songs they belong to. The musicianship here feels automated and robotic in nature, leaving little room for typical natural human emotion, and even songs that had potential personal impact really just get muffled out by weak instrumentals that really get an emotional reaction of approximately 0%, and frankly, that's just kind of sad. The disappointment I was ultimately forced to bask in after finishing listening to this album was actually the most emotion that it ever gave to me, and significantly more emotion than it ever gave to me throughout its actual runtime. There are certainly worse performed albums from even just the past few months than Come On You Know. This isn't a poorly performed album by any means, but it is a dreadfully lifeless and musically boring one. So overall, Come On You Know is a disappointing listen at best. What could have been an excuse for the younger half of the brothers Gallagher to develop his sound beyond one of tired and repetitious Britpop is generally an uninteresting, boring, and completely forgettable listening experience that leans on Moscow Rules alone to not be an entirely disastrous sepia-tone train wreck, which is why I'm going to give this album 2 stars out of 5. If I'm being totally real, Come On You Know's best aspect is its lyrics, and there's really nothing to talk about here as far as lyrics go. There's just not much to say in that regard of the album, and everything else there is below average or worse. Even Gallagher's vocal performance is, again, totally passionless, and it just really feels like this was a more obligation. Maybe, I don't know, a friend asked him to record a new album, or his label told him to record a new album. But no matter what, it just doesn't feel like Liam Gallagher really wanted to make this album, and it shines through on the majority of the record. So again, 2 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.